Today I talk about operating expenses at your piece of real estate property. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the 13th episode of Ballin with Spauldin. If you've never joined us before, please start joining us. Hit the subscribe button so that you know when we drop new episodes. Share this with your friends who want to create wealth. This is a wealth building community. We really want to start interacting. Ask questions, please leave them below. Leave comments and we'll answer those questions and get to those comments in future episodes. You know, when it really comes to expenses of your real estate, I have an interesting view that I'm going to share in a little bit, but we'll kind of cover how to look at or manage your expenses of the real estate. And a lot of times, things will just start popping out at you that will seem odd that you will have to address. And when I'm looking at a prospective property, or I'll start here. When we got these first couple properties that we have up and running, there was one of the buildings, the electric was just through the roof. And it was in like 1 month and boom, all of a sudden it shot up. Versus the other building, it stayed the same. And so, the next month, the same thing. That building had a much higher electric bill than normal and a much higher electric bill than the building we had next door. And so we're kind of like, what's going on here? And what I actually realized was the tenants were actually plugging in a car battery in one of the common areas and having it charged. So that was obviously sucking energy, right? So that was how I managed the utilities. What you really want to look for, now to backtrack a little bit more to the beginning, what you really want to look for, or what I look for, is your operating expenses to be 45% of the revenue that it brings in. Okay, so let's think about that for a second. Number one, operating expenses. Operating expenses are all the expenses that it takes to run and operate the real estate. So the electricity, the water, sewer, what else we got on here? The property tax, the insurance, management fees, the cleaning, and stuff like that. Small repairs. That's operating expense. Operating expense does not include mortgage interest and mortgage principal. Okay, so operating expenses are anything to operate the building. Financing is hard to look at sometimes and compare. It's not really apples to apples because some people are going to get better financing than other people. All right, so but the operating expenses are really a lot more apples to apples. So I look for something that's around 45%. It's going to depend on the building. It's going to depend where you're at. 40% is tremendous. 50% is okay, but if you're getting above 50%, odds are there's either something really going on here, or you just got to straight up raise the revenue on the building. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a second. But things to really look at, if with your expenses, you just want to look to see if your property taxes went up, you might be able to challenge that. So if something from 1 year to the next, it really changes, you might be able to go to, the county or the city and challenge your property tax bill. Insurance. When I'm looking at a prospective property to buy and I see the insurance rate is up, well, I know I'm going to be able to get a cheaper insurance rate. So that person, what they should be doing is checking for insurance rates in the area. And a lot of times, the person that they're working with will lower the cost of the insurance to keep the business. Management fees. Usually management fees are anywhere between, I don't know, I've seen 4%, and I question if that place is really good and they're doing a good job. But I would say it's usually between probably 6 and 8% is what the management fees are, and 6 to 8% once again of the total revenue. Utilities, it just kind of depends per door. It depends on who's paying the heat. It depends on who's paying all that stuff. But once again, for utilities, you can really look at, maybe you have a leaky toilet and the water keeps running, and that really drives your water bill up. Maybe you have very inefficient, if it's owner that's paying all the water and stuff like that, maybe you have inefficient toilets, so they're flushing 5 gallons per flush or whatever, and you can put in more efficient utilities. Same thing with the shower heads, the sink, the sink heads and stuff like that. You can get more efficient utilities to drop those costs. Maybe you're paying someone too much to clean stuff. Maybe your maintenance and repairs, those dollars aren't being spent the best. So those are really things to look at. But you know what? This is a lot of times your expenses might be up, someone's expenses might be up to 60% or 55%. And a lot of times it's not because the expenses are too high, it's because they're not bringing enough revenue in. So they need to find a way to bring more rent, to raise the laundry, whatever. They need to find a way to bring more revenue in. Because think about this. Someone could look at a building and it could be 6,000. I'm just gonna use easy numbers, all right? The total operating expenses could be $6,000. All right? Well, for someone that's only bringing in $10,000, if their revenue between the rents and the laundry, etc., the parking, whatever, totals $10,000, the operating expenses are $6,000. The operating expenses are at 60%, right? Well, that's really high. So some people might look through here and be like, oh, what's going on? Well, in reality, the problem's up here. Because now say that it's still $6,000, you can't get any more efficient. Let's say it's still $6,000 of operating expenses, but you raise your rents to, and your income up to, this is going to be outrageous, but say $18,000, or even, say it's $12,000 to start with. Let's start at $12,000. Let's say that the revenue is $12,000, these expenses are still $6,000. Well, now that drops your operating expenses to 50% of revenue. Let's say you get your rents up to $18,000 and your operating expenses are still at $6,000. That's your operating expenses then are at 33%. So do you see how I think a lot of times it's a problem up here, and you can check out the last episode how we raise rents and all that stuff, and add value. But a lot of times it's a problem up here. And something that's similar that I'll look at is a lot of what's wrong with a lot of people who want to go out and start investing money or change where their financial situation is at. They start looking at savings. And yes, it matters, right? Savings matter. But how many times would you have to save, even let's just say like this, how many times would you have to save $100 to have $100,000, right? You would have to save $100 1,000 times. Okay, how many times would it take to save, how many times would you have to save $100 to have $1 million? What, 10,000 times or whatever? That seems a little unrealistic to me. That seems harder to me. Saving $100 10,000 times seems way harder than adding value to the property and raising rents, right? Or what I should say is saving $100 10,000 times seems way harder than going out and creating a business that brings you $1 million. Boom. You know what I'm saying? And it takes time, right? But you can do that probably over the span of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You can't save $100 10,000 times in 5 years or 10 years. So a lot of times it's the income problem. It's not as much of an expense problem. You want to keep your eye out, keep an eye on weird things. And obviously, if you're running a huge operation and you're bringing in $10 million of revenue, you drop that a percentage point or two down here in the operating expenses, it makes a big difference. There's going to be quite a bit of cash flow there. But it's always an income problem, rarely an expense problem.